Hi everyone, this is Norman Kochnick on Eyes on Cricket with guess who? Norman Kochnick. Surprise, surprise. Sitting in my lounge room here in Sydney with a gentleman that, quite frankly, I have a lot of respect for. His quirkiness is beyond reproach, and I mean that in a nice way too, by the way. He's an incredible man. We're going to talk a bit about him now. He's somebody who I've known for well over 10 years. I said him when he was a snotty-nosed little kid. He was rubbing his nose with his tissue when he grew up to be a young man. Now he's a mature, almost middle-aged, borderline, not quite, but he certainly has a lot of character to him. He's done so many great things, from everything from being with Cricinfo, of course, ESPNCricinfo. He's also been the primary driver and the producer of Death of a Gentleman, which, if you haven't heard of Death of a Gentleman, you'll need to know about it now after this broadcast. What a wonderful production. It certainly was. It was one of my favourite things to see. One of the best productions on cricket I've seen in a long, long time, with real heart. Also had a program called Cricket with Balls. I won't say that to you later. Maybe I need to use expletive there. And also Two Pricks and something. I'll let him talk about that. I'm going to ask him a lot of questions, by the way. This man's going to be drilled. He's going to be interrogated beyond anything he's ever had before. He's going to be sweating bullets by the end of this program. You watch. This is Norman Kochnick going to make Jarrod Kimber sweat bullets. No, in fact, Jarrod Kimber, welcome to the show.
I mean, to be honest, mate, I do sweat a lot as a normal person, so it would not be hard to make me sweat a lot.
But sweating bullets is something special if you can do that. All right. Thanks for your time, Jarrod. Look, where do I start with you? I'm going to go back. I've got my little, crystal balls are normally, they look forward, don't they?
Yeah, I believe so.
What about what looks backwards in terms of balls? Is there any? Cricket with balls is backwards, so looking back.
I'm not sure. I think you just need to be a normal human being to look backwards. I don't think you need any special implements.
All right.
Although a time machine, I suppose, would be handy.
Yeah, okay. I'll go back on my time machine to 2010. It's probably at the Gabba. In comes Jarrod Kimber. Snotty nose. I think he still had his school shirt on. I'm not sure. He walked in there and he had this little video camera, which at first wasn't annoying, but it was novel. I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was a production within a production. Then he did a magnificent job at recording. Probably the quintessential thing that I laughed my guts out was the Brokeback Mountain skit between Alistair Cook and Strauss. Is it Ed? Isn't Strauss? Would you like to elaborate as the first thing you're going to talk tonight about, Jarrod? The Cook-Strauss Brokeback Mountain music incident. Could you run us through that, please?
Yeah, it was me and Sam Collins who ended up making Death of a Gentleman, who you talked about before. And we met, we both, we knew each other through the Wisden Cricketer, and I'd been writing for them. And we were both going out for the full Ashes, and we had kind of no idea what to do. And I remember we did a list. I think Sam might have done a list where he worked out there was going to be something like 47 accredited writers throughout the series. And we were like, it doesn't matter if we're the two best writers in the series. No one's going to notice this. Like we're going to go out there and we're going to work. And I think our big thing, and probably where our friendship came from, was really that whole thing of neither of us ever wanted to waste our time. If it was going to work, it was going to work. But what we didn't want to do is do what everyone else did. And what we didn't want to do was go out, do a whole Ashes and have it not mean anything. And so Sam, I remember in a cafe in South London, around the corner from Victoria Station. And Sam said, "What are you going to do? You're clearly going to do something that other people aren't going to do. What are you going to do?" And I said, "Look, I don't know, but I was a filmmaker and I will be taking a camera. So I suppose there will be some sort of filmmaking element to what I do." And he said, "Well, whatever you do, make sure I'm involved." And I remember we got to the first day of the Ashes. And I think the first episode of the show wasn't even called Two Pricks at the Ashes at that stage. We hadn't even come up with a name. It was some other random name. And we shot the whole thing. And so we waited till very late in the night when there were like no journalists left. I think it was like Andrew Miller from Cricinfo and us, the only three left in the press box. And we went up and we videoed a whole show in front of where the players do their press conference, which is probably breaking about 93 Cricket Australia rules at this point. And then we sort of looked at it at the end, and it was just all we had footage of was us talking, which of course is like 90% of YouTube now. But at the time, I was just like, we have to be able to do more than this. It has to be more than just two people talking in front of a camera. And so I started filming the press conferences, but then I was like, they're so boring. Why would you want to put clips of the press conferences in? Like, literally, I spent my whole life as a cricket writer after that point trying not to listen to press conferences. So I said to Sam, I don't think that was the first one we did. I think the first press conference we made fun of might have been a Stephen Finn. Did Stephen Finn take wickets in 10-11?
Yeah, I think he did.
Yeah. And Stephen Finn came and he repeated the same phrase or something over and over again in the press conference, which was really common back then. So what would happen is, as you were walking to the press conference, the media officer in cricket used to say, try and get this message out. And they used to do it over and over again. And I've been told part of the reason they stopped doing that is because we started making fun of them for doing it. But essentially, I cut together Stephen Finn having a rubbish press conference. And then I said to Sam, do you know what? We could actually have a lot of fun with the press conferences. So the one you're talking about is when Andrew Strauss and Alistair Cook came out together, and they played that huge partnership, but they just kept weirdly staring at each other all the way through. And of course, naturally,
I wouldn't call it weirdly. I say lovingly.
Lovingly, yeah. And but also because of the sort of people that they both are, they kept talking up each other. And so it made for a little bit of awkwardness between, what it's like if someone is next to you saying, oh, this guy, how great is this guy? You're just sitting there going, I hope this finishes in a second. And so I cut it to the theme of Brokeback Mountain, the trailer, and it fit perfectly, weirdly. And then something else happened later in that press conference. And then by the Adelaide press conference, again, Brad Haddon came out, said the same phrase. I remember his phrase so well. He said the phrase, this game must turn. And he said it 12 times, right? No, this game does turn. This game does turn, because Australia were a mile behind. So then I cut that one. And then we got to the whacker, and Mitchell Johnson was there with Ricky Ponting, and it was a 22-minute press conference. And for the first 18 minutes, no one asked Mitchell Johnson a question, right? It was literally all to Ricky Ponting for 18 minutes, because Australia had just gone 1-1. So everyone wanted to talk to the captain. No one was worrying about Mitchell Johnson, who'd taken all the wickets. And because of this, Mitchell Johnson, who I don't know very well, but we've got friends in common, I think we all thought, our thinking with Mitchell Johnson was that he was a big, dumb country lad, I think, for a lot of his career. And then you find out that the problem wasn't...
I'm glad you said country, by the way. I'm glad you said country.
And I think that you find out later in his career, it wasn't that he was a big, dumb country lad. He actually overthought too much. His problem was he was thinking too much. So he had 18 minutes in this press conference, and there's a microphone in front of him, Norman, that just keeps dropping, right? And instead of just letting it fall on the thing and just going, well, it's there now, the microphone will still work, he spent the entire 18 minutes trying to prop it back up and do it while Ricky Ponting goes, are you okay there, mate? And starts to talk to him about the microphone. So I would take any moment like that and we would cut them. And that, I remember I showed that to someone about 2 or 3 years ago, the Mitchell Johnson microphone. I did a Guardian masterclass, and I said, look, I'm just going to show you guys how easy it is to make a career in cricket. I did this, and this went viral, and people started sponsoring our show. Like it's that easy to break in, and I think we were just trying to come up with fun things. So the next thing that we did is we got journalists to describe the cricket in 20 seconds. But of course, again, what we didn't tell them straight away, but they worked out after about a test, was that I would be editing all the footage to make them look stupider. Put catchphrases over their faces, and we would, if they went over the 20 seconds, which they all did, not one of them even got close to hitting 20 seconds unless we got someone in with a radio background, because they're the only person to actually understand what 20 seconds mean. And yeah, we would make fun of them, so that annoyed them. And then Sam started talking to the crowd. He would just go out in the crowd, and again, those interviews where you talk to the crowd are always terrible. So we just did it in a completely different way, where we would ask them the most random question and let them go off. But my favorite moment of any of the videos we ever did was after that Ashes, when Sam went up to Lords members who were lining up to get into the ground and asked them which member of the England team they thought was the most attractive. And there's a lot of very angry Lords members go, oh, get away. Why would you ask me that? And then there were these two old guys that are just absolute heroes, where they sit there and they're like, He goes, oh, I would think that if you're a woman, it'd be Alistair Cook. And the guy goes, yeah, if you're a woman, definitely Alistair Cook. And the guy goes, but I'm a man. I would say Chris Tremlett. The guy's like, oh, that's an excellent choice. And they start discussing. And, you know, I think it was all those sorts of things. I mean, we did, I'm now friends with Matty Pryor, but when Matty Pryor broke the window at Lord's and the ECB lied about how he broke the window, and we all knew how he broke the window. He came into he went out, he was angry, he threw his bat down, and his bat banged off something and hit a window, or it was his helmet, or whatever it was. And of course, they lied and said all these different things happened. You know, we recreated, we got a cricket glove, and we actually threw it all the way around Lord's for a whole day. You know, just absolutely stupid things like that. But it was, I suppose it was something that no one else had done before. And then on top of that, we were analyzing the cricket properly. So you could have a little bit of fun with what we were doing with those videos. And you'd laugh at the Brokeback Mountain stuff or the Mitchell Johnson stuff. But then we were breaking down the game in a way that other people also hadn't done. And so we sort of created this weird genre of sports publication there.
Did you make up a new word, that John Row?
John Row, yeah.
Is that plural for John Row?
It's well, I suppose. Do you know my favorite thing about all this was when we were during that Ashes, the journalist. There was a couple of older journalists saying these guys shouldn't even be in the press box.
Exactly.
This isn't real journalism. Blah blah blah. By the next summer, their publishers and their newspapers were asking them to do videos and do the exact same thing. And I've never forgotten that. And I have all those names of those people down in a list. And all of them are out of cricket now, hilariously. And I am not. So it was, look, it was like trying to, a lot of my career has been trying to come up with things that interest me, and a lot of the rest of the time you're just trying to come up with something that that works for your personality. And I think too many times people come up with ideas that are based on what other people are good at, and if you can come up with things that you're good at. And I was a film editor who likes funny stuff, and Sam is a natural producer who likes bizarre stuff. They just sort of came together.
So let's make this clear. Sam Collins is not related to Adam, of course.
No.
Okay. So we know Adam's a crazy character, and Jeff Lemon, he's on another planet half the time. Those two work really well together. Melinda comes into play. We all, the machinations of the games that we were together, really, I'll never forget that time. Over the years, it was very good. Very good. Did you know in 2013 that I was stuck in the JP Morgan media lift with Michael Vaughan, Damien Martin, and Jonathan Norman? Did you know that for an hour and a half? I
did know that, but I only found that out recently. When TalkSport, this is so random, but when TalkSport were getting into YouTube, I was passing your videos to TalkSport and saying, this is what Norman's doing, this is what Mel's doing, this is what we cricket, because there's a bunch of people that were doing well on YouTube at the time. And I sent it to John and I said, you'd know Norman. He's like, no, I don't know Norman. I don't know Norman. I went, really? I find it weird that you wouldn't have met Norman before. And then I sent him the video. He's like, holy hell, I was stuck in a lift with Norman. Of course I know Norman. Obviously the name had just not, probably it was his surname as well, isn't it? And it just had, the name hadn't gone in, and then suddenly he knew. So yes, I did know that you were stuck in a lift with John Norman. I don't know if you know this, but John Norman has a real fear of lifts in general. Like it's very rare for him to ever get in a lift. And I don't think he has got in the Lord's lift since that day, even though they've improved them now. They don't get stuck. But he very, very rarely gets in he's got a real fear of heights and a real fear of lifts, so he certainly doesn't get in the Lord's lift. Him and Alex Tudor, both afraid of lifts, I believe. There you go. There's a fun fact. Well, it's funny because Michael Vaughan was swearing his proverbial off in that lift. Very slowly but surely, the words extended in length, but they were all swear words. Damien Martin was giggling away. We had random like food staff there in the background counting the food things. I don't know why they were doing that. And Jonathan Norman and I trying to pry the door open with a microphone. And he was sweating, I was sweating. It was like like those, you go to a pop concert and you're in those toilets, which are totally plastic. You know what it was like. The lift was there, it was stuck, and it was no air getting in. We were sweating our proverbials. It was incredible. Then about, I think 2 days later, I get a phone call from the BBC, the show that Vaughan and Tuffers do together. And I'm on a bus heading out of a cricket match where Lord Vesti, who was our guest of the SCG11, my group, and I had Michael was many people with me, and they were pulling my ear, picking my nose, playing with my cheeks while I was on a mobile talking on BBC
Vaughan and Tuffer show about the incident. It was hilarious. So I copped a lot from that. Anyway, we do digress. Okay, let's go back a step. Okay, you mentioned two pricks in the Ashes. You mentioned cricket with balls, or at least I did. Your other writing exploits. Then there was, of course, Death of a Gentleman. That was amazing. I'm really surprised you haven't had a Death of a Gentleman 2 or another extension of that. Is there any thoughts to that, doing that?
Well, it took us 4 years to make the first one. I think me and Sam are horrified about working together again, and it would take us forever.
But not necessarily the same thing, but something.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'd be very surprised if we didn't work together again. Sam's been very busy on some other projects, and obviously I stayed in cricket. But there was a, I won't go too much into the details, but there was a very, very interesting cricket character, two very, very interesting cricket characters that we almost made films on afterwards.
Right.
Both very, sort of both very famous or infamous for certain things that they got involved with. And we certainly toyed around with doing that, but it hasn't quite worked the way we want. But weirdly, I've got to call him soon because I might have another project that he's interested in. But it's we both learned a lot about making films and what we were doing in the process of doing that. And we would be much better at what we were doing going forward. But we're probably also both absolutely scarred by the 4-year process. And to be fair, Sam's, I think now, he's been making a film for about another 3 or 4 years at the moment. So he's probably at this point like, oh my God, do I want to continue to make it out?
Now, look, I mean, I love your work. You know that. I mean, the Polite Inquiries, was that you who created the Polite Inquiries? That was you. I thought so. Yeah.
So, I mean, that goes back to what we were talking about before, where, I come up with, we tried to come up with a bunch of Cricinfo ideas. And eventually I was just like, what do I have available? I don't have any famous cricketers because Cricinfo weren't sending cricketers to the ground at that point. We didn't have any, we couldn't film in the ground. We didn't have access to players. And all I had access was to me and to George Dobell. And George, to be fair to him, at the end of the day, that's his busiest time. So I was like, I had to come up with an idea that would work for me and George, that would take George only about 20 minutes and it wouldn't bother him that he had to do it, right? And so it had to be fun for him, I think is part of it. So I was just like, well, I'm just going to base the show around him. And his and I mean, Polite Inquiries is basically what him and I do all day in the press box while people send us tweets. So it's like, how do we take that and make that into a show? And, I don't know how many people know this, but George used to be a radio DJ. So he's actually quite good at that sort of stuff. He hates video and he hates audio, but he's actually quite good at that sort of stuff. And I knew that I could, if you poke him and prod him the right way, gold will come out of him. Sometimes you really have to prod him quite hard, to be fair. And so I based that entire show around that. And the good thing about Polite Inquiries is it works based on everyone's individual personalities and their own fan base. So I remember when Melinda Farrell and Fidos eventually did their version, it's a completely different version to what George and I do because they have a completely different kind of fan base. And that's why this show worked so well in that sort of thing. And you have to find two people who sort of get each other. And we trialed a lot of people in ESPN. Like, we've had funny former cricketers who are known as being funny who can't do it. Andy Zoltzman really struggled with it for a little while.
Which is amazing because Andy's someone who you would have expected to be perfect for.
Well, so Andy's very good at comedy, but comedy is is almost a completely different sort of. It's not quite comedy and it's not quite analysis. You're in the middle ground of where you're going. And so I would have thought after a couple of months, Andy would have got it. But we had funny people come in and not be able to do it. We had players struggle with it. And it was, what was great about it is that a bit like so Two Pricks at the Ashes was the original show me and Sam did. We then took that and that became Two Chucks when we went to Cricinfo. And a very similar thing was those shows didn't need famous people on them. This is the big problem with the way this industry works is that these big companies, I mean, I recently worked for cricket.com and I kept telling them, you don't need to hire famous people. You need to hire talented people, back them and put them on regularly and they will create their own audience. And they're like, but we can get Brian Lara. And I'm like, you can, but Brian Lara costs a lot of money because he's Brian Lara. And what we worked out with Polite Inquiries was when Cricinfo went back and looked at the numbers early on, there was no, when we got Raul Dravid on, the numbers didn't go from 20,000 views to 80,000 views. They were still at 20,000 views, even with one of the most famous cricketers ever. And so we had this sort of permanent, sort of upward curve on that sort of show. And if you're creating really good content like that, that's fun and that's interesting, but also that tells people a lot about the game, people really, really do engage with that. And it's not the way that big publishers and big companies really work. They're just like, oh, this great show would be so much better with Michael Vaughan on it. No, because Michael Vaughan won't get this show. You make a show. When you have Michael Vaughan, you make a show for Michael Vaughan. You know what I mean? You make a show for Norman. You
Absolutely.
make a show for Jarrod. And that's what people have not understood about the way these things work.
Well, look, I'll be honest with you. I'm not trying to brag, but I get that. I get that hugely. I mean, I bring on a Steve Waugh or a Jeff Thompson, yeah. But I love, as you said, the moments which are my favourite. A guy called Chris Vernon, who's English, who's played with MCC, he's very dry and boring generally. But I stir him. He stirs me back. We've built up a reputation now. We're enjoying that immensely. It's not unlike what you do. I mean, I must admit, what you've done in the past has inspired me, certainly, is to be fun with someone and have a repertoire with somebody who quite frankly is not the best cricketer in the world or whatever. I've got like for example a girl called Aparna Saini. She's quirky but she's fantastic. She came on with me. We went in front of the Harbour Bridge and Opera House, right? There's the Harbour Bridge and Opera House behind. I haven't planned a word with her, not a single word. Right, just come over here, stand here. Okay, so I'm carrying like a pork chop saying, Australia, we're going to thrash India. Look what we've got. We've got the Harbour Bridge and Opera House. All you've got is that Taj Mahal. That's 20,000 kilometres away. You've got no hope. And I'm carrying all that. And she, unplanned, said to me, but are they 7 wonders of the world? And I said, I guess they're not. But we have 11 cricketers that are 11 wonders of the world, of course. And you've only got the one, Virat Kohli. And out of that, we created a skit between this wonder of the world scenario. And she trumped me because the Taj Mahal, of course, is a wonder of the world. Harbour Bridge and Opera House or not. So that was brilliant. It was completely unplanned. And I think that's one of our best shows. We put it on ABP News. It went beautifully. Anyway, we've wasted 22 minutes talking about ourselves. How dare we? No. But the reality is I've always wanted to do this with you, Jarrod. And I don't think you realise how significant it is to me to have you with me because I've known you for such a long time and I've watched you do your stuff. And now you're at another stratosphere, and a testament to the people that are on this particular show with us now as comics, like Keshav, who's been on your show, for example. You know Keshav, Huria, you've been on his show. I mean, he's connected with me now. The reality is that it's been a great way that the community of people that are doing the YouTube work have grown, and now we've got the opportunity with the COVID situation to espouse it at another level, as you know. We've all had a great deal of exposure, perhaps more than normal, I don't know, but it certainly has worked in our favour. Now, I want your honest opinion. You're based down in England, aren't you?
Yep.
Do you miss Australia as a base?
Yeah. I miss Melbourne. The rest of Australia.
Oh, hang on. Are you saying Sydney's not worth missing?
I don't miss Sydney. Isn't one of my places. It's not like I don't think. I'd probably, before I worked in cricket, I'd never spent more than 3 weeks in Sydney in my life. So it's not, Sydney's not a home for me. I don't go back there, feel like it's a home. I enjoy Sydney the same way I enjoy, Colombo and Cape Town and, other, interesting cities. But I don't feel like it's my home. But I miss Melbourne. I miss my city. I couldn't have done what I had done if I was based in Melbourne. It was impossible. We don't have a proper cricket industry in Australia. We have 2 months of the year where people pay you to do cricket. I would have spent most of the rest of my time covering, Bulldogs versus the Saints or something like that, And so, that stage, Peter English and Bryden Coverdale were the CrickInfo people. There was no cricket.com.au. There was no crick buzz really back then. So I didn't have a choice. I had to follow where the work was, and it was always going to be either England or India. What
about Brian Coverdale's show? You could have went on his show and been, what do they call it? What's his role? He's the guru.
I don't know if you know this. I don't think we've talked about this. I don't think I've talked about this much publicly, but I suppose it's worth doing it with another Australian. So Bryden and my family go back a long way. So I knew him. I knew of him before when he first started working for Cricinfo. My cousin, who went to school with him, contacted me to go, "Do you know who this guy is, Bryden Coverdale?" Like, I went to school with him, and then my uncle actually taught him at school. So my uncle was his teacher or his principal, I think. And I have spent a lot of time in Bryden's hometown of Camperdown. I actually lived in Camperdown with someone else who went to school with him for a while. So I've known Bryden for a long time, and then obviously through Cricinfo. And then one day we're out having a beer just outside the Gabba, and I go up to get us a drink, and the guy goes, "Are you with the Shark?" And I was like, "What?" It like literally Bryden would be the most sort of quiet, normal person you'll ever meet, and suddenly he's this mega celebrity, and it completely took me by surprise. And Bryden is, I hope he watches this, but he would be the least likely person that I could think of that would deal with fame well. So I'd love to just like get a camera and follow Bryden around for the day where people say nice things about him. But he's brilliant. It's absolutely great. He was absolutely wasted by Cricinfo. He's one of the funniest people I've ever met. He's brilliant, funny writer. And I'm glad that he's gone on to be something else, because I always thought he was, we had him on doing desk work and, writing about press conferences and stuff. And it's just like, this guy is next level. So it's great now that he's been able to go on and do all that sort of stuff. And, to bring it all back, me and Bryden were in the press box. Because Bryden is obviously famous for now being on Australia's biggest quiz show, or one of the biggest quiz shows. But me and Bryden, it's called the Chase, or the Chaser, is it?
The Chase, yeah.
Chase, yeah.
Oh, Chase.
And we used to come up with our own quiz in the press box, where you would pick a random, quite often Victorian, sometimes Tasmanian or South Australian cricketer, from the 80s or 90s, sometimes 2000s if we felt like we needed to. And you would pick the player, and then you had to get as close to possible with their batting average or bowling average. And when I say, I'm not talking about picking Tony Dodemaide or, Jamie Brayshaw. I'm talking about, the sort of Graham Vimpani and Mark Atkinson and, sort of absolutely random cricketers that people like, I remember the more random you could find a cricketer, the more fun it was for us. And the incredible accuracy we had of working out these guys' averages based on our childhood memories. So Bryden is an absolute legend. And it's great that he's gone on to do so well in a completely different medium.
Absolutely. All right. I could talk another hour about our personal lives, but I mean, you're married to a Sri Lankan. That's correct, aren't you? You're married to a Sri Lankan.
She was born in the UK, but yeah, her family's Sri Lankan. Yes.
Well, come on, stop picking. She's Sri Lankan. You can't take Sri Lanka out of the place.
No, of course. But she would also say she's English. That was my only point. She would say she's English Sri Lankan or Sri Lankan English. But yes, yes.
Well, I was married to a Sri Lankan for 15 years. You knew that, didn't you?
Yes.
Yeah. That's another story. Viewers, that's another story for another day. We'll leave that alone now. We'll talk about that another time. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. Okay. All right. So, and I hope my ex-wife is watching. Hello, darling. No, I won't go there. All right. Okay. So let's go back to that, Jarrod. Look, the cricket. We might as well talk a bit about cricket. Quite frankly, the World Test Championship, as you know, is on June 18th. New Zealand versus India. And I'm saying New Zealand versus India because who is effectively number one at the moment on that listing? Who was number one? New Zealand or India?
New Zealand were ranked number one recently. I mean, it does change a lot. So I haven't looked. I don't care that much about the rankings because it's a terrible system.
But for argument's sake, let's say I think it is New Zealand. So India's
second. New Zealand's number one at the moment.
Yeah. So effectively, if it's a drawn match, test match, it's shared. Now, I would have thought it would still go to New Zealand. I thought they would deservedly be crowned the winners, because if you're leading the comp, so to speak, and you're drawing against someone, by default, it goes back to the person leading the comp, if that's the way of describing it. So what's your thoughts on that? Why?
I actually think they should have just done a 6-day match. I think that would have been probably the more sensible thing. I don't think this entire series is thought through enough from beginning to end. So, that makes you can understand why that's the case. I suppose they didn't want the draw. I would think that it's the Shield final that has made them feel uncomfortable about that, because you get one team playing for a draw then. And that's always been, we've had some great Shield finals over the years, but I remember a couple of years ago when Ryan Harris was bowling to Mark Cosgrove, and I'm trying to think if it was Jordan Silk was opening with him. And they put on a 200-run opening partnership where neither of them played a shot. And it was some of the most dour cricket I've ever seen. And you got Ryan Harris out there absolutely steaming in. And Mark Cosgrove basically didn't have a backlift. He was just batting with the bat there. And I could see how that would happen. That would be the absolute worst possible case scenario for the World Test Championship, I would think.
There's no doubt. But I really don't think these two teams would approach it in that manner. I'm pretty sure New Zealand wouldn't do that. But anyway, put that one side. I don't want it to be a draw. I want them to win this match. And as you said, make it unlimited day test match if necessary. Get the thing done. Wouldn't that be fun? Imagine making an unlimited test match. That would be fun. Imagine.
Yeah, I don't think we'll ever see one of those again, to be fair.
I mean, it would never get to that point. You'd never have a match where it really, maybe at Colombo when Sri Lanka are playing, I don't know, Zimbabwe, it might happen, where Sri Lanka bats for 5 days, in the old days anyway. Remember that 985 that Sri Lanka scored? Yeah. That was incredible.
I think if you made it 6 days, unless you had 3 or 4 days of rain, I just don't think that anyone would be in that situation. So I think a 6-day match, you would be able to finish most test matches now. You finish most test matches about 2.5 days these days.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, the reality is, do you have a choice? Who are you erring on the side of to win that match between New Zealand and India?
I think we probably need to see New Zealand away from home, because they just don't play away from home enough. I think India is probably the better team, but we just haven't seen enough of New Zealand away from home. Also, it's quite handy for New Zealand to be in a situation where they're playing in conditions that should suit what they do. Not that India will be massively, I think India certainly have the seam bowlers to be able to handle Southampton. But, from a very basic level, New Zealand couldn't have got a much better place to be playing the World Test Championship final than in England.
I agree totally. And the fact they're playing 2 test matches leading into it, the runs will be on the board. They'll have enough practice there. The bowlers will be fine-tuned if they play them all. That's another thing. The reality is that India's coming off a plane into a quarantine situation, going about training, not really playing. You'd think it's stacked against India somewhat, but we'll wait and see if that actually happens in the match itself. I tend to think New Zealand should go in as, well, you would argue favourites somewhat because of the conditions and the preparation. But again, India, if they play out of their skin, will prove another level of cricket they've reached in this series, and with the likes of Rishabh Pant floating around, who knows? All right, now, the IPL... You did cover that, didn't you? But not every game, literally. You did every game, literally.
Every game.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did as well, and that was torturous. It was the time. I mean, timing for you was perfect. You can wake up leisurely and be up at what time? 3 p.m. in the afternoon. What time would you be up?
Yeah, but the game started at about 3. Yeah.
Oh, that's just embarrassing. 3 p.m. I had to go. The game started at midnight for me. Of course, I stay up until 4 a.m. and watch every single ball. Of course I do. The reality is it was 29 matches. It was certainly interesting. There's 31 to go. Do you think they're going to play in the UAE? Like they're talking, there's a bit of murmuring about September, October in UAE prior to the World Cup.
I mean, it makes the most sense. So I would have assumed that's where they would do it. I think there are political complications and other complications if they try and play it in, Sri Lanka or South Africa or England or anything like that. The UAE seems to be massively on top of COVID from last I've checked, unless they're just lying about everything, which, to be fair, their government is known for. So, I would assume that is where it's going to be played. It makes the most sense, and then it's just about fitting it in from there, isn't it?
It certainly is. No, again, we won't go too far forward, but Australia-England Ashes series, are you coming out for that, or you don't know? What's your movements for that?
I wouldn't think I'd come out. I mean, I think the one thing that's changed a lot in sports journalism is how much we will travel from now on in. I have work for that series, but my guess is that I'll spend the entire time back in the UK following that. But you know, it might, I mean, who knows who I'll be working for or where, whatever by that time. But my guess is I will cover that Ashes from the UK, which is going to be weird. But I covered India, Australia from the UK last year. So it's with all this sort of technology, you know, you and I being able to do these videos on the other side of the world, I think that now major press organizations are going to be like, we don't have to send you there. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, you can cross to me anytime if you want a real Harbour Bridge Opera House. I'm quite happy to pose.
It's not even one of the 7 wonders of the world, Norman.
Oh, don't you start. I'm going to tell Aparna about you. Aparna's saying she's a real character. She's been going on with that all the time, and I pay out on her. And we had Steve Waugh in a skit, and we were fighting with Steve Waugh sitting next to us. And Steve I've never seen Steve giggle like he had this, his whole body shook. It was really cute. It was very different. I've never seen Steve in that giggle. Have you ever seen Steve Waugh giggle very often? He doesn't giggle.
Well, I have got a Steve Waugh story for you if you want. So very early on in my career, we did a press conference for when he was on the MCC committee, and it was all about, you know, saving Test cricket. Test cricket was dying, and so me and Steve Waugh, he actually, it was the same press conference where Steve Waugh had brought someone out from Sydney who was a lie detector test expert, because they wanted the MCC. This is true. You can look this up. The MCC was suggesting that all players should take a lie detector test on whether they have fixed the game. And I was like, I think I was the only journalist in the room who happened to know that lie detector tests are complete nonsense and that they don't work. And that's why they're not used. I think, for instance, I think I Googled it, you know, New South Wales. This guy was at lie detector test from New South Wales, expert from New South Wales. And I said, they don't even use them in your home state. Like, why would we use them? And I remember saying to this guy over and over again, can you get a false positive? And he wouldn't answer. I said, it's a simple question. Can you get a false positive? Eventually he said yes. I said, no player's ever going to agree to this, so this is pointless. Yeah. But the other part of it was that particular press conference, and I think because I'd asked about 100 questions by this point, the other part of the press conference was them trying to save Test cricket. And I think if we hadn't just started the film, maybe it was around the time of, you know, Test cricket's boring. What can we do to save Test cricket? And I was saying to the MCC, I can't remember who was, it wasn't Steve Waugh directly, but I was saying, look, you're talking about marketing here, but have you thought about the complex nature of Test cricket when you're trying to market it? Like, it's very easy to market the film Dude, Where's My Car, right? You know, it's a stoner comedy. It's a simple thing. It's very hard to market a French art house film. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, but you guys are pretending that you can just suddenly get as many people interested in Test cricket as are currently interested in T20 cricket. They're completely two different markets that you're going towards. Anyway, at the end of the press conference, as you used to do in those days, you go up to pick up your recorder. And as I go to pick up my recorder, Steve Waugh grabs me by the arm and he says, "What's this film, Dude, Where's My Car?" And I was like, "Oh, mate, you're not going to want to watch this film." He goes, "No, I want to know what it is. It sounds interesting." I mean, it's not interesting. And then I had to explain the plot of Dude, Where's My Car. Now, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a stoner comedy. It's like, you know, Cheech and Chong or Harold and Kumar. And I'm now explaining the plot of two guys getting so stoned that they lose their car and then they have to fight aliens. And so I have seen him chuckle. And also, I'm pretty sure that he never went off and watched the film Dude, Where's My Car?
Look, I find it refreshing. When I went to his office with Aparna, we went through his book, and he has basically all girls staff in his office. He has a foundation, as you probably know, and it's incredible. He's pumping out all these products, raising money, giving it to leprosy, giving it to all sorts of charitable groupings. He's a man possessed. It's a magnificent, well-run, and you know, you and I know him as very honest, very decent, very upstanding, and wouldn't do anything wrong. I was so impressed. Just the vibe in the place. All these women absolutely adored him, not for being a cricketer, but just being a good boss, effectively. And he was very generous, and he was so relaxed, and he was jovial. It was just a very special insight into the Steve Waugh that maybe not everybody sees, because he's very shy, as you know. He's fairly introverted, and sometimes appears standoffish when in fact it's just a bit of nerves or a bit of inwardness. He's not really that open, but he was so relaxed, and we were mucking around with him. And I'd say to him, that there's a print there. I go, oh, where's that going to? He goes, no, Norman, it's actually still here. I go, no, but where is it going to? And he kept on trying to base it on the tense of my sentence around it's still here. And I was like, no, it's still here. Where is it going to go? And we were mucking around. It was great fun. It was a very refreshing thing. I'm trying to do something with Shane Watson in the near future too, through a guy called Carmel Khan. And he's done a lot of stuff with a great cricketer. But look, I can't speak highly enough. I'm dying to see what you do next, because your show is just simply called Jarrod Kimber, isn't it?
My YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called Jarrod Kimber. The channel's called Jarrod Kimber, but there's a bunch of different different shows on there. So we have the video.
Go through them.
Yeah, well, we have video essays, which are, I don't know how to explain the video. It's almost like an animated cricket explainer series. And then that includes Neil Wagner video. If you want to check out my YouTube channel, that's probably the place to start, the Neil Wagner video. And then we have another thing, which is almost like it's called Good Areas. It's like an analysis driven thing where we animate a little bit. And then we have I do something called The Last Knock, which is more like a current affairs type of newsy look at cricket. And then there's just a bunch of other stuff that we do. I'm doing a live later today, actually, on a show we call Wagon Wheel. So yeah, we've got, it's a few different sorts of things that we're putting together. And partly, it's the ability to, I think for me to be able to go, okay, I've got an idea for a video. How does this fit, and what do I want to make it into? So we're currently doing a video series that's probably going to go for about an hour and a half. And we're going to have to split it up into 3 videos because there's so much animation and everything that goes into it. We can't even get them off the computers properly. And it's all the way that down to me just doing our Q&A with the audience on YouTube. So it's been a lot of fun. I basically, taking my old Cricinfo sort of pieces and then finding a way to animate them as much as possible and make them into something that you can watch. And it's it's very, very amateur still. We're still at the very early end of it, but it's so much fun to be able to make these videos.
Good Areas. Now, you had that on Cricinfo. Did you have the term Good Areas? You said that a lot. Was there a show called Good Areas?
Yeah. So what happened with Good Areas was that I pitched it to Cricinfo and CrickBuzz, and Cricinfo picked it up, but we used that title. So Good Areas is sort of there's a little bit of animation in them, and a lot of me talking in them. Whereas the video essays are pretty much video animation all the way through. But yeah, that was the idea with Good Areas, was to take a topic or a player and really do a proper analysis of them. So everything from why right arm bowlers are bowling around the wicket more to left-handed batters. All the way through to I did something recently on form when Cowell people said he should be dropped. And so, yeah, it's just like I take a very random topic that no one would ever find themselves being interested in, like John O'Wells, and sort of expand that topic. I did a whole Good Areas on the fact that no one likes the reverse sweep more than Jimmy Anderson, of all the random people in the world that can do that. And, it's a lot of fun to be able to take a topic that people would not ever think they would be interested in and get them to. I remember a friend of mine when we did a whole video essay on Ben Dunk. It's probably 20-25 minutes long, this video essay
on Ben Dunk.
On Ben Dunk, right? And you're just like, everyone knows who Ben Dunk is. I think if you follow cricket, like his name has popped up, but he's Ben Dunk, right? He's not famous. And he's not a household name. He was dropped from the Big Bash this year and no one seemed to care. He was once traded for Hamish Kingston, who no one's ever heard for, and no one seemed to care. And I did a 25-minute video.
Can I quickly interrupt? Ben Dunk.
Yeah.
I went on several cricket tours to Sri Lanka when he was a kid on his way through in Brisbane. Yes, Ben Dunk, Ben Cutting, Chris Lynn. They were all on these cricket tours. They're called the Morton Cricket Tours from Brisbane to Sri Lanka for 2-week tours. And Ben Dunk was on one of them, and I interviewed him as a young kid as he grew up. So I know Ben Dunk particularly well. It's funny how you say he's not known. To me, he's known really well. But of course, in an international sense, he's been out there for so long, but not noted for being there.
Well, my thought with Ben Dunk was that he was a cricketer who had played in almost every major league and he played for Australia. But that if he was sitting next to you in a bar, you probably wouldn't know who he was, right? And so I then make a 25-minute video on him, and people are like, people who didn't, there were people literally Googling to see if it was a real cricketer or if it was someone I'd made up, right? And
oh, damn it, if you have told me, I could have given you photos of him when he was in Sri Lanka, when he was a kid. I could have given you all sorts of stuff.
And so in that particular case, being able to take Ben Dunk and make a big story around his career in T20 cricket is a huge, it's almost like a challenge for me as a creative person to be able to be like, okay, well, I'm going to pick the most random topic here possible. And, you know, there's a bunch of weird topics that we have coming up on, you know, on various things that I've come up with. And it's like if you really put the time and the effort in, you can kind of make anything. And that's kind of what the channel is about, is picking, picking everything from Jimmy Anderson's reverse sweep all the way through to Ben Dunk or Neil Wagner. And, you know, like I haven't done a video on like Virat Kohli yet. Do you know what I mean? Probably the biggest name cricketer I've done one on was Joe Root, and no one cared because everyone knows Joe Root. People would rather be talking about Ben Dunk or something more random. And so that's kind of how the channel.
Bring up Cook and Strauss. Bring up Cook and Strauss again. Bring them up.
They're finished. I've done that. That's done. I move on, man. Next.
Okay. All right. I loved it. I'd watch it again. Going back to Ben Dunk, Ben Cutting, Chris Lynn, Berrick Barnes, who played for Australian Rugby Union, was on these tours. We had a bunch of, you know, and then on the opposition we had Niroshan Dickweller, Dinesh Chandimal playing against us. I knew Niroshan Dickweller since he was about 13, 14, and his mum and dad desperately wanted him to, they were offering me presents to bring him to Australia to play cricket in Australia. They would have, if I would have, you know, billeted him and taken care of, they would have been ecstatic. They thought Australia was the holy grail. And I actually said to the parents, no, leave him in your country. He's going to probably play for the country someday. Duh, look what's happened. I'm very proud of that. And even Dinesh Chandimal, I used to run and talk his house with my ex-wife, and we were together then. And Dinesh was a little tyke running around him before he was good mates with Arjuna's son Dian Ranasonga, who didn't end up playing very high levels. So yeah, that was quite a story. That a lot of synergies here that you didn't even know about. The Ben Dunk story, you had a perfect encyclopedic reference point in me. I could have told you so much.
I think when you watch this video, you will realize that the last thing I needed was more information on Ben Dunk. It would have we would literally never have got the video online if I chatted to you about Ben Dunk. It is it took us 7 months to make that video, as it was.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it was. I think I made it for the CPL last year, and it went up during the IPL this year. Like it was a real. It was a lot of effort went into that video from a lot of different people.
Well, the fact that he went from Queensland and Tassie was not really that well known, but it was somewhat known. All right. Is there anything you want to ask about me? I've been talking enough here. You know what? While I'm talking to you, I'm getting these random messages from a group of people that I used to be involved with during the 2000 Olympics. And then somebody spotted a person today wearing a Volunteers 2000 Olympics jacket on, and I'm getting all these messages about that. It was so random. It's crazy. Because I was involved with the Olympics. I was the language services manager for SOCOG during the Olympics of 2000. I had that role. So that was another story. How about anything you want to ask about me? Anything that a burning question from Jarrod Kimber about Norman Kochnak. Is there anything that you wanted to ask me? That can be brutal. I don't care. About how I've put on weight, perhaps, or something like that.
Well, this is my question. Why YouTube? Why did you choose YouTube?
Oh, it wasn't really any more than the fact that I've been doing work for this Extra Time, ABP News, India Today, Sports Day. They'd all been using the YouTube platform. So I thought it was natural progression. A lot of the people who had seen me on that were on YouTube. So I thought by me setting up something from there that it would move a transition across. That's really why. And I mean, it was monetized within 3 days. I mean, I'm sure yours was monetized very quickly. It's not that it makes a lot of money, folks. It does not make a lot of money. Well, I'll let you know, live videos, unless you've got an actual paid sponsor, makes almost zero. And we don't do it Or at least I don't do it for the money. I do it because I love it. Well, are you suggesting I should do it on another platform? Is that what you're suggesting?
No. It's just. I mean, I'm OG YouTube. I probably put a video up within 6 months of YouTube being a thing back in 2005 when I was a filmmaker. So I've always been on YouTube. 2008, maybe even 2007, I was putting up cricket videos that I was editing myself. Edited a Ronald McDonald ad to have Andrew McDonald in it, and did something with Andrew Simons being the Predator, and a few other videos back in the day. And I had to really be convinced to come back to YouTube. There's a part of me that I really didn't want to sit in front of a camera in my office talking for long periods of time.
Wow.
And which is why that's partly why my channel's animated, or mostly animated, is because I was just like, I didn't want to do it. And Aria, who's now my producer, who I think from when he was at Cricinfo, when he was quite young. He just kept saying, just keep coming up with ideas, and eventually we'll come up with one that you like and we'll be able to do. So I was just interested, it's, for someone like you, so what are you now, 80, 85 years old?
Beg your pardon. Unless you've got, I think you do need glasses, by the way. I'm a young, do you want to, okay, guess, okay, I'll give you 3 guesses. If you guess close to correct, I'll give you a free Eyes on Cricket with Norman Koshlak hat. Which is the old version, by the way.
I've already done 85, so I'll do 62.
What the hell? What planet?
And I'll do. Okay, yeah, you're right. Now I'm having a better look at you now. 73.
Right, well, you've just lost the bloody. I'll send you a free hat anyway. This hat is the poor color. I'm 50 something.
50 something? Well, you haven't even given your proper age. 50 something's not an age.
Well, it's between 55 and 57.
Okay.
See how good your is.
I would have thought that because how long have you had the YouTube channel? When did you come on?
Well, realistically, about a year, but I only really made it serious from January. Before I had a couple of home videos. Before
you only made it serious when India Australia happened, and literally every cricket YouTube channel got big overnight. Yeah, no, it's the same. We've been putting videos up about once a week, and my videos have been doing really well on Twitter, and I didn't even realize that Twitter and YouTube just aren't linked. Like, I can get 2,000 or 3,000 people from Twitter to go to one of my videos, but it was the moment that YouTube basically turned on the faucet that everything completely changes when they give you that algorithm. But anyway, I just thought that it's quite interesting for someone of your incredible old age. Would you say 66? I think I heard you say.
I think, look, I tell you, viewers, he's dyslexic, or something's going severely wrong there. There's something not right. Just what's one side, Jarrod? Guys, he's a bit cuckoo sometimes. Just he's got no idea about age. He thinks everybody's at age.
I've got very good eyes.
I know how old you are.
I'm 41.
Yeah, that's right. I'm 56.
Yeah, and we look like different species, really. But I think no, I found it interesting because you sort of came from. I know that you've always had your sort of. You've always been involved. You used to do Facebook Lives as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
Facebook videos.
More on those other social media platforms.
Yeah. So I just found it interesting that after all these years, you sort of went into the YouTube market. I thought that was quite an interesting move from you.
But it was more to do with the fact that I had all that exposure in those months with all those channels. ABP News, India Today, Sports Today, Extra Time, which has got multi-million platforms, that I thought maybe I need to do it. I never really, I had no interest in doing it before, but I realized I didn't just jump on the bandwagon because it was all everybody else was doing, by the way, either. I did it really because it seemed fun. I actually didn't think anyone would watch me, to be honest.
Well, I think if you look at it, it's not basically. So I started my channel properly in May last year, I think, maybe April last year. We didn't do much
at the same time. May was when I started, but I didn't
and we didn't really do much with it at that point. Like I said, I was still giving videos to Cricinfo, for instance, and we were putting up the odd video on our channel. And then it was towards December when I realized that there was this community of cricket fans. People started putting comments up on the video saying, "Oh, we haven't, followed you since Cricket with Balls," or "We haven't followed you since you did 2 pricks at the Ashes," and all this sort of stuff. And you realize that for a massive amount of cricket fans, they don't read anything, and they've basically been on YouTube for years. But then there was that whole movement, like the great cricketer, final word, Mel came on, and then but before that, it was really Akash Chopra, Shoaib Akhtar, and a few, and We Cricket. So it wasn't, that we all sort of got caught up in that sort of second wave of it. So it's not really a Johnny come lately, because if you sort of got serious about it around that time, that's kind of the period where people realized that it was a thing. And then you saw, Kevin Peterson and Darren Goff, and there's a bunch of different people now looking at it. Like someone like Brad Hogg. Brad Hogg had a channel before either of us, and sort of had let it go to a certain point. So I just find it really interesting. It's a completely different audience that has come across, and I just, being able to, I think that's one thing that I've learned, for COVID. Like I went from riding high coming into COVID. I was analyst for every second cricket team in the world, and was, working for TalkSport.
That's something I forgot to mention. You were doing a lot of the IPL teams, CPL teams? Is that right?
I'd worked with IPLs. I'd never been like an analyst for an IPL team, but I'd done St. Lucia Stars, I'd done Melbourne Stars, and I'd done Scotland men's team. But I'd done a heap of other little bits of work. So I came out of that, and then suddenly COVID hit, and I was unemployed for the first time in a very, very long time. And at that stage, I started my own podcasts as well. So it wasn't just YouTube. So I've got a couple of podcasts that I run as well. Red Inker, if you'd like to go out and get it. New series of
Red Inker.
New series.
Red Inker is just
just Red Inker.
Is it?
Yeah, and then Double Century, which is my podcast on the history of cricket. So it sort of started them, and then YouTube. It was just like, wow, I think I was already pitching all these ideas to Cricinfo anyway, and CricBuzz, and they picked them up. And then I just said, and then I went back to Ari and I said, we might as well just start a YouTube channel then. And so it wasn't an on purpose thing. It was very much kind of by accident, I think.
So just quickly on the podcast, what's involved there? What's the platform for podcast? It's not called podcast, but what do you do? I mean, YouTube, you go to YouTube. I get that. Podcast, you go to where?
Are you talking about publishing it, or are you talking about listening to it?
Combination.
Publishing, you just have to find a company that does it.
I'm not a podcast person. That's why I'm asking.
Okay, so SoundCloud do it, right. Anchor do it. There's a bunch of organizations who basically host podcasts for you, right? As far as playing it, have you got an iPhone?
Yeah.
You go to iPhone. The podcast is an app that Apple put on your phone, and you literally go into the search thing and you can search for it. And if not, there are now about 100.
So naive. I don't know that. I never ever bothered with that. I've never ever gone down that track. The reality is that with podcasts, I know that there's Spotify as well. Spotify, yes. You can get yourself put on Spotify as well. There's another platform.
Spotify, Apple are the two major ones, but there's bunches of other. Basically, you go to one of those good companies I was talking about before, and they just send your podcast to all the different podcasting platforms.
So you got Overcast and Apple. Apple one, the second one you're talking about, is it? Is that what
so Overcast is a lot of people use that, but there's hundreds of different podcast apps that you can use, and you just go to whichever app.
What do you want?
I use Spotify mostly now because I use Spotify for my music, so I use both. But yeah, you just go to the search. If you put in cricket podcast, let's see what comes up. My guess is it would be absolutely thousands of them. So Mark Nicholas, although Mark. So if you put in cricket podcast to Spotify, you have the Caribbean Cricket Podcast, you have the Cricket Podcast, you have Sky Sports Cricket Podcast, The Final Word with Colo, following on, which is Talk Sports. There's CricViz. It goes on and on and on when it comes to podcasts. Wisdom Cricket Weekly.
I'm naive. I'm 56, don't forget. So you got that there, for example. Okay, that's called Anchor. Is that one of the major ones? Is it?
So Anchor is how you make the podcasts more than you can listen to podcasts on Anchor as well. But that would be, we use Anchor for our podcasts to be able to make them. But the reason that podcasts are so good, and this is the bit that I can't wait for your spidey senses to notice, is that you and I both know that you can get 100,000 people watching a video on YouTube, and it's very, very hard to monetize it. Podcasts work in a completely different way, and they don't go viral, and you have to build them up slowly over time. But even 5,000 regular listeners on a podcast is a huge podcast, because it's not, YouTube views aren't seen as long term. People don't listen to don't watch the whole thing, and also it's not the same sort of relationship in the ears. And so podcasts is a really interesting thing. But the reason that I always wanted a podcast network, because I love podcasts. I think it's a brilliant medium to be able to explore. And the two cricket podcasts I wanted to do, I've got another non-cricket podcast as well that I haven't released yet, but the two cricket podcasts weren't being done. And I was like, well, I think I can slip into the marketplace here. But also, when I was unemployed, I had the ability to, set up a Patreon, and people could support the network and all those sorts of things. So it was a really important thing to be able to and do that. And I just think that podcasting is I didn't want to do the same sort of podcast that a lot of my friends do, which is you and your mate, and then you make lots of in-jokes that go on for 100 years. And I've already done that podcast. I did it with Andy Zoltzman. And if I got Andy back, we'd do a similar kind of podcast to that. But what I really wanted to do is have a different topic every week and get a different expert to come on and talk about it. So it might be a player who has lived a life, and I'm talking to them about their life. But it might be someone who is a blogger, who's not semi-professional writer, but they have spent the last 6 months talking to everyone in world cricket about DRS and how it really works. And you get them on. And I think that the DRS podcast is like our third most listened to podcast, just because you can't get that information out there with other people.
Well, just look at this. Learned Norman here is thinking while you're talking. I've got an actual YouTube called Eyes on Cricket. Not very useful for podcasts.
You should make hats.
Make hats and put on podcasts.
Make hats and put Eyes on Cricket on it.
Oh, that's a great idea. Magnificent. Now, look, listen, podcasts are useless, not useless. They're very good, I consider. But for me, I'm so much of a visual person. Although I do speak a lot. Maybe I should try a podcast. What do you think? Do you think I should try a podcast?
I think this is what I've worked out. And this is why I asked you about the YouTube thing specifically, is that what has happened in the last 5 years is that everyone has their medium that they consume, right? And so what we were told when we were starting, so I was going to sell a podcast to someone, and I said, I'd really like to do it on YouTube as well. And they said, oh, you can't, you cannibalize your own market. And I was like, the only people who are going to listen to my podcast on a podcast and also watch it on YouTube are such hardcore fans that they'll probably do both anyway, and it doesn't matter, right? What you find is I write an article, and then I get an expert on quite often to talk about it on my podcast, and then I make an animated video on them. Have a look at the comments on my YouTube. Very rarely does anyone ever go, wait a minute, you already wrote this piece for Cricinfo, or you've already done a podcast on this, right? Because people don't consume across the whole spectrum. So if you have the ability now to be able to create a podcast, that is not exactly your YouTube channel, because obviously it needs to be slightly different, but it's a combination, that is a bit like that, and you can do that. There's no reason why you can't build a market for your YouTube. And I think that I was talking to a couple of major organizations about going to work for them of recent times. And I was saying to them, you guys don't understand how the modern media is. You are completely pissing away all your best talent and all your best quality pieces, because you get some guy to go off and write this incredible feature on this, thing that everyone loves and everyone shares on Twitter. But the only people who follow that feature are people who like long form journalism. You've missed out on the whole podcast thing, and you've missed out on a whole YouTube channel. And so that's what I have been doing, this sort of combination of all those things. And look, you have to learn about them all, and there is more time involved. But, I'm in a situation now where I have a burgeoning YouTube channel. But I have a very strong podcast network behind it. And I also have my own emailer. Most of my written content now I do on an email. Oh, I got to tweet that out today. Thanks for reminding me. And quite often, the all three are linked. Sometimes it's almost the exact same thing in all three different places. More likely what happens is I will get an expert on to talk to me about a topic on the podcast, and I'll sort of take my knowledge and their knowledge, put it together and make an animated video. But quite often I will write a piece for people who like writing, and then a week later I'll be like, I reckon I could animate that. I reckon I could make that into something that people would like to watch as well. Maybe make it slightly different. I did a piece for Cricinfo recently on AB de Villiers where there's almost no numbers all through the piece. But to write the piece on AB de Villiers, I actually had to do a lot of research into numbers. So I've now got a whole spreadsheet with like 15 things, and I can turn that into graphics for the animation. If you've already read the piece and you go to YouTube, you might be like, it's not for me. If you haven't read the piece, you might be like, wow. I'm huge in that, and you will find that there are people that actually just like Norman. They don't really give a shit about they just like they would like more of you, and so I think that's a thing that I've learned is that people go to this kind of medium that they like, whether it be TikTok, whether it be Instagram Reels, whether it be.
Well, I have
YouTube.
a TikTok presence.
Of course you do.
But I mean, I'm a big kid. But okay, back to podcasts. I hear like Matty Johnson's a rugby league guy. He does his podcast, but he records the visuals of it. Yeah. What do you call that? Is it still a podcast? No, it's not. It's a live streaming. It's no longer a podcast.
It's both. Why can't it be both?
Okay. All right. I get confused. I go, how can I be a podcaster and I can see you? I thought a podcast is when you can hear me.
No, a lot of podcasters got big on YouTube back in the day, to be fair. Joe Rogan's one of the most famous podcasters in the world, and his was YouTube. Look, what we do is we record our podcast visually. We usually release it first as a podcast, and then a week later we put it up on YouTube. I've already got the content. Right. And it's a whole different audience on the two different platforms. And if you've already listened to the podcast, you just skip that video. You don't have to follow every single video that I put up. So I look at it from that point of view. That's kind of the level that we have got to now. But yeah, look, I just think that there are people that desperately need that. There's something about a podcast, which is why radio is still so. Radio should have died off in many different ways. Yeah. Outside of your car, no one should be listening to radio. But actually, it's not dying off, and the reason is that there's a intimacy that you get from radio that you don't get watching a YouTube video. It's a different medium.
Well, let's be honest. I mean, I'm not exactly the most attractive-looking man in the world. I mean, I have got fangs, but
second most.
Exactly. The reality is, my voice. I think my voice is quite good. I think I've got a radio voice, so maybe I need to give this podcast a bit of a go because I haven't up until now. And I have brought very good-looking girls on my show because I thought the visual would be attractive. But they're fun to talk to off-screen as well. Am I saying something wrong there? Am I saying
that's a very old generation thing. I'm bringing pretty girls on so more people will listen.
I didn't say that. I did not say that. I said,
you kind of said that.
Now, folks, listen to me very carefully. I'm very much politically correct. Older, but politically correct. If there's any good-looking men that like to come on the show, the only thing is if there are good-looking men out there, they get really jealous of me. And then we have this fight, this physical fight saying, I'm better looking when I know that from a distance I'm as good-looking as anybody. So let's put it that way. Would you agree? Wouldn't you agree? I need to get a yes. Is that an agreement from you?
What, from a distance that you're? Yeah.
No.
From like a mile away, you're really attractive. I've always found.
Well, since when have you sent me a mile away, Jarrod? How would you really know that's true? How do you know that's true? I'm ugly from that distance. I look like a peanut.
Yeah, that's your best form. You as a peanut is your best form. But yeah, I think that I don't think there's any reason why if you can sit here and talk to me for an hour, there's no reason why a podcast can't work, and there's no reason why you I could be wrong, but you would have a lot of interviews with a lot of people that you could instantly start releasing now. Do you know what I mean? So you actually have an advantage when it comes to podcasting. The only thing I would say to you is podcasting is a lot slower than YouTube just because you don't have that sudden jump up. But podcasting is, it's really about finding a day of the week that you think you can release something every week and putting it out that day and making sure that it's good quality content. Podcasting I just find it a really, really intricate medium. And, I really like it.
Well, I think I would too. So if I've got a YouTube video which has obviously a vocal side to it, clearly, you're saying I just turn basically. Can you get that video and shove it into a podcast? Is that what you can do?
Yeah, you've got all the video, so you would just take the audio off it and so you would convert it to an audio file.
I'm a dinosaur. I don't know how to do those bloody things.
I'm a dinosaur. 2 minutes ago, you told me you had a TikTok page.
Well, TikTok's does it say you can't be over 50? Does it say that? No.
It should. I think it should say that.
Oh, what do you think? We're all perverts down there looking at other people's. No, we're not.
To be fair, I on TikTok I follow cricket accounts, maybe a couple of basketball. I follow. This is one of my favorite things to follow is people who do cool tricks on Excel spreadsheets, and I follow a lot of social media what would you call them? Like people who work in social media and how to make better videos and all this sort of stuff. And yet every time I go to my TikTok, there's always just a 18-year-old girl jiggling her tits. I don't know. It's got the weirdest algorithm I've ever come across.
It's funny. It happens to me too, but I don't know how they get there. No.
Yeah.
The reality is I go there because Shripali Wirakoti's on there, who I'm very dear to. I manage her. She's someone who played for Sri Lanka. You know that.
Yeah.
You know that. You know that. So these girls, I help them out with social media. I run a lot of girls' Facebook accounts. I get all the dirty messages from all these men. Like I think I got one for you the other day. No, that's right. Wasn't you? It was someone posing to be Jarrod Kimber saying, "Hi, darling, I'm available." I was shocked, and I think I replied to you, and you replied back. No, that's something else. Completely false. No, the reality is that these accounts, I'm deeply involved with their social media. I help them get their platforms, and I'm very good at Facebook and even to an extent Instagram, but on TikTok. But I need to get my YouTube and now podcast. You have taught me, and probably all of our viewers, all about podcasts. I think I'm going to go and get. So you're saying I should get Anchor first?
We use Anchor. I mean, SoundCloud is another one that people use, but we use Anchor. I've got a producer who does that for me as well. But he picked Anchor, and he seems to know what he's doing.
All right. Well, I'm going to have to talk to Aria after this as well because see whether he wants to help me. Aria, I think you're wonderful. You're always the best looking guy on Cricinfo, by the way. You're much better looking than Andy and Jarrod and the others. But
Aria's a very good looking man. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, but I'm not talking in that manner. I was just saying upstanding gentleman is what I'm saying. All right, we're changing topics here now. Jarrod, I've had a wonderful time with you. I mean, I probably could have talked to you for another 4 hours, quite frankly, quite easily. We haven't even really talked about cricket properly. But okay, just one thought in your mind. Who's going to win the IPL if it's on?
I thought Chennai were playing the best cricket, so I'd probably put my money with Chennai.
Not Delhi Capitals?
I thought Delhi were really good as well. I don't think they're as strong a team as Chennai at the moment. It'd be really interesting as well because if it goes to the UAE, things will completely change again, I would think, and I could see how that would help Chennai.
Yeah, I went around the streets of Coogee asking random people about cricket, and I had this cute 3-year-old kid who had a muffin in front of him, and his mum rev up, and he heard me say Delhi Capitals. I asked him, who's your favourite team? And he couldn't get Capitals out, so he said, Delhi Caterpillars. So there's a new name for Delhi Capitals.
That's probably a better name, to be fair. They probably stuffed up not using that.
Yeah, I mean, Caterpillar's not known to win cricket matches, but I guess there'll be enough of them around that probably annoy everybody. Might win anyway.
Because so many Capitals have won cricket matches before.
It's a pretty dumb name. Yes, I'll give you that. But why did they change? Why was it Daredevils? Why was it Capitals? Was it because Devil was a negative connotation? Is that why? Or?
I don't think Daredevil was ever a particularly good name either, was it? I think they tried to... I don't know what they were trying to do with Daredevil. I mean, Knight Riders and Daredevils were the two names that sort of must have come out of, I don't know, focus groups or something, and they don't work, do they?
Do you think Indians would have got a bunch of focus groups? Come on. That's not an Indian thing to do, is it? Focus group?
Oh, I would have thought the owners would have done that, wouldn't they? How else would they have come up with Knight Riders? For God's sake.
Are you saying they've got a glass screen and these people sit behind there with these random people on the streets of India walk in there and say, what would you call them? I don't think so.
I would have thought they would have done some sort of research like that. Yeah, definitely.
And come up
I'd be
with
shocked.
Capitals?
Yeah,
Capitals?
I would have thought by the time they got to Capitals, that would have just been them copying an American name. But Daredevils and Knight Riders, I find it hard to believe that was come up with any other way. I could be wrong. I would have thought that IMG would have done a bunch of research for them and given them a few different options. But I don't know. I wasn't involved in the early part of the IPL. So
your investigative skills should be able to find this out for us. Aren't you able to go and dig?
I probably could find this out for us. I mean, Knight Riders is one I've always been interested in because they have not once used David Hasselhoff correctly.
But look, isn't it bloody obvious why they call Kolkata K Knight Rider or Knight K? Isn't that obvious? Delhi,
when you say obvious, there are a lot of words that start with K. They could have been the Kolkata Knights, which actually would have made a lot more sense. Knight Rider is a particular word. It's an odd thing. And Daredevil, at that stage, Marvel was getting quite big. And obviously Daredevil is a character from Marvel, which I don't know if that was a problem as well going forward. But yeah, I think those names. I mean, to be honest, the rest of the names sound like cigarette companies, and Mumbai Indians sounds like they actually couldn't come up with a name.
But okay, the funny one for me is, why did they go from Kings 11 Punjab to Punjab Indians? What was that? What was the purpose? Is it called Punjab Indians? No,
I never understood. I never understood why a supergiant had to rise. It's already a supergiant. Like, are you saying it now needs to get bigger? Are you saying it's not the right size?
They were drunk.
You're either a rising giant, maybe I can be okay with that, perhaps, or you're a supergiant. You don't need to be both.
But okay, but go back, Punjab Kings, correct, and Chennai Super Kings. Wouldn't you think when the Super Kings play the Kings, the Super Kings would win based on their name? Wouldn't that be
do Royals outrank Super Kings and Kings?
Depends what part of India you're from. Probably they do.
But basically at this point, once you get to all those teams, you are talking about just cigarette companies. I mean, Super Kings, before Chennai was around, if someone said the word Super Kings, you'd be like, yeah, I'll have a pack of those. I need some matches.
Oh, my God. I swear that leave you and I in a room long enough, we'll be in straitjackets, I reckon. We'd go into strange dimensions. Look, Jarrod, I'm gonna thank you sincerely. I've enjoyed this, as I expected to do. This is an honour to me. I love you to death. You've been a great friend. You've always been so upbeat. I've enjoyed everything you've done. I follow you like you're my little son who's grown up to be a big boy now. And I'm not joking. When you first started, you weren't a kid. You were an adult, but there was a kid-like way about you, even more than now. And I don't know if you realise that. I would love to I might have a video somewhere of you mucking around, and you had this expression on your face. It was like you were getting away with something. That's what
I think that's my entire career, isn't it? Me getting away with something.
Oh man, you had this little camera and you're sort of hiding it like that, and it was like you were doing something illegal or something. It was hilarious.
I mean, a perfect example of that was just we weren't even sure we were allowed to film, so I just kind of filmed on my lap.
I mean, the Indian media guys do that all the time. They're constantly videoing when not supposed to, and they're getting told off, depending on what room they're in. I love that.
Yeah,
I think it's great.
I certainly, I've managed not to do that as much of recent times. Now I usually have a conversation with someone beforehand and make sure that I'm okay. Here's a fun story. We go back to Two Pricks at the Ashes. Gideon Haigh was having a conversation with someone at Cricket Australia, and they were saying we need to make cricket more fun. It needs to be more accessible to newer audiences and everything. And Gideon Haig's like, we should check out Two Pricks at the Ashes. That's exactly what they do. They've created this whole thing. And Gideon saying, yeah, they filmed in the ground, blah, blah, blah. And Cricket Australia guy goes, they filmed in the ground. Can't do that. And Gideon's like, oh, God. Like, literally, I've told you something that you want, and you're already finding a way not to do it. Anyway, look, most of my career has been getting away with things. I think that's fair to say.
I'd love to have you on again at some stage, and it's up to you whether you've got time. But it's been on. I mean, I hope you enjoyed this. It was like
that's been fun.
We haven't planned a damn thing, guys. We've come in here off the cuff. We didn't need to. We know each other too well. We've got too much history. I mean, another person which I find very dear to my heart is Catherine McGregor, and what she's doing now. Her Sky News is going gangbusters. She's got her own show. You've seen that, haven't you? The McGregor Report.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see it obviously, but I've heard the news. Yeah,
it's been sensational. It's really. She was an understudy to Alan Jones. I'm not describing that probably. Maybe not an understudy, but there was something going on between an under as an over situation with Alan Jones. But Catherine McGregor is where am I going?
I think you've just that's going to be in like a Sydney newspaper tomorrow. That what you just said.
No, the Catherine, I can say to Catherine, I love her to death. She's been fantastic to me. Good on her. She's got guts like you have, doing things differently, doing things when people are against you, whatever the case may be, coming out on the surface because you have quality products. And let me tell you guys, going to Jarrod Kimber or to Jarrod Kimber on his YouTube or the plethora of things on podcasts that he's got, go through them again. What were they called again? I've already forgotten. What was the podcast ones he got again?
Podcast. Look, if you, Red Inker and Double Century are the two podcasts, and my YouTube channel.
And Double Century, right?
Yeah. I mean, everything. I think there's a link in my Twitter profile, and you can click on that, and that will go to all the random things that I make, which is a lot of random things.
There's nothing more. I mean, I'm sure everyone that watches my channel is watching yours already. I've got Himanshu Chowdhury. I've got a couple. I'll go through this guy, Himanshu Chowdhury, fantastic guy. You know Keshav Haria well, of course. Ray PMB 9 has been on my show on a number of occasions. He always gets up. If I'm 5 minutes late, he's on to me. Dreamer DD, he's been on mine a lot. And Vasant Narain, there's a lot of questions they've asked you directly, but they're great guys. They're great friends. Do you actually realise that I've got a subscriber level and I've got a membership level on YouTube? Have you got a membership level?
I don't really know the back end of YouTube because I let my production company do that sort of stuff.
Well,
so
just for your sake, subscribers subscribe, but a member pays an amount every month and they can be given.
Oh yeah,
that's it's very, very. It's great. I give people attention, which I'm happy to do. I love it.
I do that via Patreon because my Patreon covers YouTube and my writing and the podcasts. So
it's on the Patreon. Now YouTube are doing their own thing now.
Yeah.
So they've got. Okay. All right.
Beautiful.
I've learned a lot from Snake. I'm going to go and pretend that I know about podcasts now. I'm going to try and do that. I'm certainly going to. Well, Patreon probably more swung towards what YouTube are doing for me, but I'll look at Patreon. So this is exciting. I'm going to get you a top. You're going to get. I've got shirts coming out with eyes on cricket. They're really cute. Not this butcher shop effort, which I did first go. Hasn't really sold very well, guys. I'm not too sure why, but it's not selling well. I'm disappointed. So I've moved on to better hats.
With all the graphic design you put into that hat, it's amazing people haven't bought more.
No, that was very difficult. That was. No, well, it was my first bloody attempt, Jarrod. Give me a break.
Is that when you went into one of those stores in the middle of in the middle of a shopping center where they like put stuff on and is that what you did? Yeah, I mean I know Australia very well.
I was in a hurry. I wanted to get one done quickly. I made a big mistake. All right, but I have got something other. I'm going to trump you on this one. Have you got a cup with your face on?
I don't have any merchandise. Is that your face? You look like Jarrod Callis there.
I said eyes on cricket.
No, I don't. I back with Cricket with Balls years ago. I did stuff and made money off stuff like that, but I haven't really done it yet for the YouTube channel. And we might do stuff, especially like the videos that have worked really well, like the Neil Wagner one. It'd be great to do that. And
what was it? Give me a what?
Neil Wagner. Like we did a big video on him, and it's very popular. It'd be great to say to him, can we use your face on this T-shirt, and then we'll split the money and see how we go. But that depends on whether he likes the video, which may not. He may not. To go back to the Ben Dunk before, Ben Dunk kind of liked his video, although his exact words were, "I don't know whether to laugh or cry."
Well, that sums it up, doesn't it? But I'm going to give. I'm waiting for you to have some merchandise. Why can't you create a cut? It's Vistaprint. It's online. You just put your damn photograph on there, and Bob's your uncle.
I think you and I have a slightly different design aesthetic, and I need to find something that would work for me going forward. But I'll come up with something. Yeah. I don't think. Put it this way: I don't think I'll ever have a mug with a picture of me from a cricket ground on it. I think that's a very Norman thing to do. That feels like a very Norman idea.
That's actually not a cricket ground. That's a bloody coffee shop called Gusto. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Can't you see?
Mate,
Gusto.
as I said, you look like Callus in that picture, so I can barely see you.
That's actually. I'm happy about that. How come I look like Callus there, but I look like a Callus, not Jack's Callus, but I look like a Callus.
Yeah, just a random Callus. Norman, I better go, mate. I've got some other things to do, but absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
And I will invite you back again if it's not too much of a threat.
I'll come on one time. What, too much of a threat?
All right. I really appreciate that. I really do, Jarrod. You mean a lot to me, mate. I mean that in all sincerity. I'm very honoured to have you on. You're probably the most significant person I've had on, in my opinion, because I know you that well. It actually means a lot. It means I could almost cry now. It means a lot to me. I mean it very seriously.
You got a picture of Steve Waugh behind your head while you're saying all that.
Well, it's not. It's the Taj Mahal. Now you need glasses. Where is? Where is?
It says his name on it. Steve Waugh. I thought he designed the Taj Mahal.
Well, he didn't. No, he thinks it was one of the. Well, that's why he put it on there. He didn't put the. He should put the SCG on there. Oh, he's doing a book called. Spirit of Cricket Australia, Spirit of Cricket England, everything. So there you go.
Interesting.
All right, Afghanistan, Bhutan.
I've got to head off.
All right. Thank you very much, Jarrod. See you soon.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye. Wasn't that magnificent, everyone? We had Jarrod Kimber on there. Amazing as he always is. I'm very much. If you notice, there's a lot of synergy between he and I. He does things differently. He suits himself, which is an amazing quality of show. He does different things, but it's not even so much different things. He does things that he wants to do, that he loves to do, and then he brings it out, and he does it with a great deal of passion. And that, to me, is extremely important for me. And my efforts is to do things with passion. Now, Munchie's saying, we'd love to listen live, going to have a catch-up later. Best wishes all sorts of meetings, all that. Okay, that's all right. Well, the reality is Munchie's always there. Ashwani, Rana, I'm going to try and bring Bharat on there eventually. I've asked Melinda to come on. I've asked a whole heap of people. I've asked Jeff Lemon. They're all mates of mine. I've known them for years. Great to have more of them on the show. So, all right, guys. I might just see whether Kesha was here earlier. He might be busy now. But it is interesting. Would you guys watch a podcast if I did a podcast? I wonder if you'd watch that. I wonder whether that would be something you will not watch. Listen. I think I'd be worth listening to. I think you could put the screen and just listen to me. It probably wouldn't be too bad. All right, guys. Well, we've gone a long time now. I'm thanks about. As you can see, I haven't been well, and I'm going to try and get on more often. The show of an Aussie and a Pom, all talking all things in there, will be on shortly. We've got the likes of the other Aussie guys, Pat and Sam and Paul, and their so-called Swami Army, or no, Swami, Palmy, as in Palm Beach Army. They're going to be coming on pretty soon as well, so that's worth watching, I'm pretty sure. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm just going to see whether Kesha wants to come on. I don't think he can. So we're looking up. I don't think. Anyway, all right. So I love my cup. Yeah, Prathamesh, I do love my cup. I think it's a great cup. It's certainly that we're there. Norman, how is New Zealand the World Test Championship without winning an away series? Jarrod Kimber made that point about the so-called away series. I don't think that's going to necessarily be against them. It's going to be for them. They're playing 2 test matches against England leading into the World Test Championship. They're there early. They're playing on what is virtually New Zealand/England conditions. You would have to say that there's a very good chance we're going to have a result. And I mean, Jarrod Kimber mentioned 6 days. Why not? But I do not want to have a draw match. I don't want that. I really don't. It's not something I want to do. So Shalane, I'm done. Wow, watching. You're watching what? Okay, well, I'm not sure what you're watching. Watch out, so that's good. All right. We've got a number of people that have been online for a while. Yeah, and Keshav there. Keshav, are you there? You want to come online? Are you coming online? You can if you want to. I'm in the mood to talk longer today. If not, we'll sign off now, guys. I'm going to try and do things regularly again. We're going to try and find themes that we're going to work with, because clearly we've got a bit of a quiet period. Looking at New Zealand won in home games against West Indies, Pakistan, and drawn against Sri Lanka, and lost heavily against Australia. Yeah, look, you can't look at any of that now. We've got to look at this specific match. It's a one-off match. Southampton, it's probably more of a. It'll seem, I would imagine, the swing. Might be a bit of turn, but I don't know it'll be that much. It'll suit New Zealand more than India. Well, if India's bowlers are up to scratch, they'll suit them as well. But you would argue that New Zealand are going to be seen as favourites because of the fact they've been there for 2 matches leading into it. And they're going to have, a lot of their bowlers bowling well. When you've got Southee, Wagner, and you've got, even the likes of Jamieson and, Santner to an extent, and obviously, Bolt. How could you forget Bolt? What a magnificent player he is. He would be great to have. I'm just going to see what big Kesha. Oh. I'm not sure the Kesha is here, but okay, thanks. I'm just going to see whether Kesha wants to come alive. If he doesn't, okay. Now, the Palmy Army guys have been out of action a bit, so they're there to come. And you've got, and Chris Verne has also been playing cricket and have been work detained, so they're the reason why they're not there. But they'll be on soon enough. We're going to be doing shows. We can't do it all the time. And also, I wasn't well, so it was a combination of those three. I needed a bit of a break, guys. It's been a bit heavy for me. Yes, Darren Stevens in his 190 with 15-6 in the cup, 45. Amazing. Simon Willis has been a part of the show, lauded over it and thought it was great. And I thought it was damn good too. But it's still a county match, guys. It's not a test match. But yeah, it was a great effort. It was certainly good, and he had a lot of test players running around there as well, I guess. So, why didn't Darren Stevens play for his country now? That's the question. That has to be a question that has to be asked. If he was that good, he should have been there a lot earlier. All right. Yeah, we'll get well soon, mate. You'll keep on asking me to come on, but I can't come if I'm not well. I haven't got COVID. I've got a friend of mine, one of the girls who I'm trying to bring on the program. She is actually based in Sri Lanka. She has it, so is her young daughter, who's 2.5, 3, and a mother. So it's quite sad to have all three, unfortunately, in a situation where they're not doing that well. It's a very sad state of affairs, and we'll certainly look at more and more as we go on, guys. I think it's been fantastic, and I think it's been great to have you on the platform. All right, guys. I think we might just, considering the time of day that we've got, which is certainly fairly early. It's now, what is it now? 9 o'clock in Australia, which is 4:30 p.m. in India. Most people are still working. Look, I would agree. I think that, no, I'm not saying county cricketers are not good cricketers, but they're playing county cricket. They're not playing for their country. They're not the elite of the elites. Some play very well. Some potentially could be at that high level, but let's be honest, they're probably they're probably not quite at that level. But it's still enthralling. In Surrey, I think Surrey had both Rory Burns and I think the other opener was it Whiteman. I'm not sure if it was Whiteman. It was very, very, very good players indeed. All right, guys. Any other questions? I'm just waiting on looking at what other guests we can get on now. I'm just going to see if Kesha is not normally on this early. I'll just see what the question. We may not even have the. No, we'll leave it at that, guys. All right, guys. You take care. I'll be on soon again. Both the Palmy Army, and also the obviously episode 14 of an Aussie upon and talking all things cricket in India will be coming up shortly. We'll also return to some lead into the World Test Championship. We'll talk more about the IPL as may or may not unfold, the September-October scenario, which has has legs as a strong comment. I don't know whether it has legs as such, but we'll see. And then we'll move into areas such as the World Cup leading into the Ashes series. And between, of course, England and India will play a series which may be somewhat curtailed. How do I rate Kamo Roach? Is a great bowler, certainly, but he's taking all the wickets in county cricket. Missed out a few and playing for his country, but still, I think he's got over a couple hundred wickets now. Any update regarding Sandpaper Gate? No, it's gone very quiet, actually. Very, very quiet. More discussion about Stuart McGill of late than that. In fact, the Sandpaper Gate, they've worked out that there's no steam in it. It was a bit of hot air going on, starting from obviously Bancroft and then a bit of retaliation from Gilchrist and Slater, I think, chipped in, and Warner had some private words with the bowlers. The bowlers came out and made statements. Look, Michael Clark made a statement. I think even Sim Bain made a statement a bit more about Steve Smith. Look, let's just leave it. Let's hope it's left. Annoyed me no end. Because there was a lot of rubbish. It was, as far as I'm concerned, the matter's over. The players have been banned. They've served their sentences. Bancroft probably never play for Australia again. Warner won't captain Australia. Steve may be considered post-Payne, but Payne's going to play the Afghanistan test and probably the whole 5 tests against England, which will lead to 2022. And that will then mean that you'll have a situation there where you'll have perhaps a new skipper may return to Steve Smith in that future beyond that point. Okay, so yeah, there's a fair bit of new ground to be covered there. So, all right, guys. I think we've done pretty well today. We've gone a fair time, and it was great to have Jarrod Kimber on. So thank you to you all. I appreciate your time, and we'll see each other very soon again. Hopefully not too soon, not too far away. All right, so we've had a pretty good broadcast. Considering the time of day, which is way early, it's not a bad situation. What have we got here? New comments? Yeah, Bancroft certainly did have wrong ammunition. There's no doubt about that at all. My prediction for the World Test Champions, I think I already gave that. On Jigs Dessa, I'm not sure if I had you on before. Look, the logic of my selections are based on the fact that New Zealand have got 2 Test matches against England in England, leading into the World Test Championship. So they're going to have some playing runs on the board. India are basically, I think they're still in England. They're still in India now. I think at least until May 25th or thereabouts. And then they're going to eventually head to, it may well be as late as next week, to England and then go into quarantine. I'm not sure how many days, maybe less than 10, and then virtually step out and play a game. It's going to be very, very difficult. They're going to play intra-team match, which is not really a true match. They're not getting true match conditions. They're not getting against bowlers that can swing naturally. Some of the Indian bowlers can certainly bowl, swing and move the ball, yes, but they're not playing against true opposition until the World Test Championship. That must make them somewhat underdone. So who are my 4 semi-finalists for the T20 World Cup? India and England are certainly 2, without a doubt. Australia are going to really, really struggle. You could argue the West Indies will be a big chance. Even Pakistan might be a chance. I would argue it will be India, England, New Zealand, and maybe the West Indies. I fear that Australia won't make the final 4. Ashwani, you're asking a lot of questions. How long is this? Or make your all-time Test 11 from the day you watched cricket, Test only. From the day I watched cricket? From I watched. Well, I can't leave Don Bradman out of the 11, I'm afraid. You can't leave Don Bradman out of the 11. In fact, on my on my YouTube page, you'll find on my YouTube channel, I have put together. Well, it wasn't me. It was actually I think it was the ICC in conjunction with Wisdom. I'm not sure. Don't quote me on those two. We had a situation there where I'm just trying to find it now as we speak. I actually put it together on on the community page, which has got, again, Mike, if you look to the tab up the top there, you also see the community page. See the community page? See the word community? Go to that and you hit community. Then you scroll down, you can see all sorts of things. And on one of those, I had recently an actual discussion about Joe Darling. Was one that I certainly had. There were ones about the Ashes. Just trying to find it, guys. Give me a second. That's my hat when it comes up. No South Africa, no, or Pakistan maybe, but I don't think so. Okay. Players that I saw playing live. Okay. I saw Viv Richards play, so he would be my team immediately. Some opening batters. I mean, Gordon Greenwich and Roy Fredericks, amazing West Indian opening batsman. Okay. I'll give him my 11. Okay. I would have Matthew Hayden seems to be one that always sticks out. I'd have him in there. Gordon Greenwich would be another. I'd even have those two in my opening pair, to be honest. I have Viv Richards at first drop. Bradman I didn't see live. Okay. Viv Richards at first drop. I would have potentially Ponting and Tendulkar in whatever order. So that's openers at Greenwich and Hayden, Richards, Ponting, Tendulkar. That's 5 batters. Coley may get a Guernsey, but I'll put him as 12th man at the moment. Number 6, I'd have Doug Walters. Amazing. You don't realise how good he was. Scored many centuries in a session. Then I'd have at 7, I think Adam Gilchrist will be the keeper without a doubt. You'd have the likes of Glenn McGrath, probably, I was going to say Dale Stone, but I was Glenn McGrath. I can't go past Dennis Lilly. And then I would have, so that's 8, 9. I'd have Shane Warne as a spinner, and 11 would be either Morley, perhaps, because of his stats, but no, I won't put him in there. I probably would have, it's a hard one. 11 would probably be, I'd have to throw probably both of them there as well. Both of them would be in that side. But then you could probably toss in like any number of players. Imran Khan. Because, so the all-time, there's something they call the all-time Test 11. The all-time world Test 11 based on the ICC rankings. So what they were ranked on the ICC rankings. You had, look, you can see the names there. Go to that page. It's on the community channel and then down. The all-time world Test 11. Okay, we had Len Hutton from England. Jack Hobbs. So Len Hutton and Jack Hobbs, they're ranked 3rd and 4th best ever batsman. So surprisingly, they weren't my time though. Number 3 is Don Bradman. 4 is Ricky Ponting. 5 is Steve Smith, ranked higher. 6, as far as keeper is concerned, was not Adam Gilchrist. It was actually Kumar Sangakkara. Number 7 was Gary Sobers. I'm not shocked by that. Then you have, let me have a look. So again, I'll repeat that. The 11 was, in fact, Len Hutton, Jack Hobbs, Don Bradman, Ricky Ponting, Steve Smith, Kumar Sangakkara, and Gary Sobers. They're your top 7 players. Then you had, I think there's a bit more beyond that. And the bowling one certainly had Murali in there because of his stats, really. Here we go, the bowlers, here we go. Imran Khan was number 8. 9 was George Lohman. Very few people know about him. He was ranked 2nd. George Lohman, Lohmann. Sydney Barnes, another bowler, and Murali. I mean, some of those players were well before our time. Yes, I agree. So we'd have to be very careful. Ian Chappell's plays up. You don't know how good Doug Wallace was. He scored centuries in a session back in the day when there was no one-day cricket in Test matches. And he would be there having a cigarette, play cards, having a beer and going out and playing. Yeah, I would argue that if you saw Doug Wallace play, he batted like Sehwag, yes, but down the order at a time when they didn't have a need to bat like that. So cavalier in his style. He had a 6 to score his century in the last session. I think it was at Perth, and it was off Bob Willis. Quite incredible, indeed. All right, guys. So, again, go to my YouTube channel, for God's sake, guys. Please do that. Eyes on Cricket, you know that you're on it now. But hit the subscribe button and the notification button. Please do that. It's worth your while doing. All right, guys. At the time, all-time well in Indian. Siva Pirak in Indian conditions. Well, okay. He's still going to put Don Bradman down there. He might have to bring in players like Gavaskar then to open. Gavaskar might open even with Sehwag. I wouldn't go Gavaskar, Sehwag, Bradman, Tendulkar still. Tendulkar definitely still. He might look at a Dravid in there then. Adam Gilchrist loved those conditions as well. I'd say Kumar Sangakkara certainly played well too. Then bowlers, I mean, for God's sake, you can bring in a whole. Kumble has to be considered. Ashwin has to be considered. You'd still throwing Dennis Lilly in there for sure. There's players like Gary Sobers, I think, liked in Nicholas as well. You reckon Cook's number 1? Alistair Cook, number 1 in the conditions, perhaps. You can even say Monty Panesar was a great bowler in spinning conditions for a non-Indian perspective as well. He was great. Steve Smith could be there, yeah. Malcolm Marshall and Steyn as bowlers. Not Steyn, I don't think. He was a great bowler, but no, Malcolm Marshall maybe, yeah. It's hard to say. I mean, if we Google that, maybe we should start. Actually, I'll start up a community discussion. Who would be in your 11? Your all-time from anywhere in the world. So I've written here, who would be in your playing 11, sorry, all-time 11, playing in India? So I've asked that question, guys, so I'm expecting you to go there and answer. Who would be in your all-time 11 playing in India from anywhere in the world? Okay. That's what we're going to go with, all right? Okay. All right, guys, it's time to go. So there's Norman Costing here, thanking Jarrod Kimber from Cricket with Balls, 2 cricks at the Ashes, from his Death of a Gentleman, fantastic documentary, his work on Red Inca, these podcasts, there's a number of things that he's done. He's been brilliant all the way through CricketInfo, ESPNCricinfo. Wonderful to see him on that as well. And I hope to see a lot more of Jarrod Kimber. I'll get him back on the show. I think he'll be happy to do that. So all the best, guys. This is Norman Kostic from Eyes on Cricket saying goodbye. All the best. Speak soon again.